We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andrew, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Tom was waiting on me this Tuesday morning, giving myself a haircut. Usually it's the other way around, but not this week. This week we switched roles.
That's right. Yes, very switchy in the roles.
Yep.
All right. I don't really have anything to talk about before this podcast. I spilled my coffee. That was the big.
That's a shame. We got piles of questions and lots of comments and stuff, so no worries. We can put all the time.
All right, let's get to it. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your questions answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. The other places you can find us: www.avrant.com, youtube.com/avrant podcast.
No,
right?
youtube.com/avrant.
It's facebook.com/avrant podcast. I got them out of order. So you can find us on all those places online. Mm-hmm. After you want to ask questions, then it's AVRant or Facebook, not YouTube. We don't read those. We're going to contact Rob directly. It's Rob at AVRant. His Twitter is at FirstReflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. My Twitter's at avrant_Tom. Let's thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways you can do that is going to www.avrant.com. Click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. Mm-hmm. There, you can leave us a PayPal donation, which, PayPal. We want to thank Matt. Matt did that this week, so thank you very much, Matt.
Yeah, Matt, thank you very much for that PayPal donation. We appreciate it.
We also want to thank our 84 patrons over at patreon.com.
Yeah, that's patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you'd like to sign up, think of it as a voluntary subscription, as little as $1 a month if you'd like, or infinity dollars a month. Anywhere in between. We'll take it all.
Bill Gates will take the infinity. Just 1 month.
Sure.
Let's see here. If you can't support the podcast financially, just let us know how you supported us or in what way you let people know about us, and we will mention you. So, John let Accessories for Less know that his Marantz SR6012 purchase was because of us. Matt ordered, I don't know if this is the same Matt or not.
It is the same Matt, I believe.
Matt ordered some Ascend Sierra Luna speakers, an SVS cylinder sub, just one, don't know why, and acoustic treatments from GIK, all on our advice. I must have the SVS people said, wait, you just want one? Do you already have another one? Well, the AVRant guys usually order two at a time. He told each of them he heard about them from us. Phil bought a Marantz SR7012 from Accessories for Less and let them know we sent them their way. Kurt on Facebook told his friend Andy that we talked about SVS subs and recommended them highly. So Andy gave SVS a call to ask him a question. He was so impressed with their customer service that he not only bought a PB1000, but also a bunch of Prime Series speakers for the rest of his home theater setup. Mario mentioned to Accessories for Less, got an earful of us today, this week. Mario mentioned to Accessories for Less they heard about them from us when he bought his Denon S930H receiver. So thank you, Mario, Kurt, Phil, Matt, John.
You went upwards in the list. I'll go back down. It's John, Matt, Phil, Kurt, and Mario. Thank you all very much for the support. Thank you for mentioning us to those retailers and manufacturers, and congrats on your purchases. All very nice stuff.
In the news, Alamo Drafthouse Cinemas has been beta testing a season pass subscription service at 2 of their locations. Their CEO says they've been impressed by the response, so they will be offering season pass subscriptions at all of their locations before the end of the year. Prices may vary slightly based on region, but expected to be about $20 a month, and so far it's been unlimited movies per month, although they might decide on something similar to AMC Theaters' Stubbs A-List?
Stubbs A-List.
A-List. Mm-hmm. Subscription that offers 3 movies per week for $20 per month. Dude, who goes to more than 3 movies a week? I mean, I'd have to have no job, and so I'd still be like, I don't want to go to the movies again.
That Stubbs A-List, I have zero problem with that restriction, because they're even like, if you want to see the same movie 3 times in one day, that's okay. They'll even let you do that on the Stubbs A-List one. They're just like 3 movies a week. It resets every Friday morning. I'm like, that seems entirely reasonable for $20 a month, especially since that one lets you do Dolby Cinema or IMAX, which AMC does have. But yeah, Alamo Draft Drafthouse getting in on this. They've got a little over 50 theaters throughout the U.S., so they're not like a gigantic Cineplex company, but still they're getting on board with it. Looks like it's going to be about the same price. So far they've been doing unlimited, but who knows, they might limit that a little bit when the actual thing rolls out. But I'm happy to see this. I mean, I think it makes all the sense in the world.
This is like the first announcement from anybody in the last, like, it feels like decade that I've gone, yeah. $20 a month. That price seems reasonable to me.
I
mean, for a movie, because you're used to paying upwards of $15 a movie ticket anyway.
Exactly.
Or more sometimes. Yeah. So, but let's say $15 a movie ticket. So you're paying a little bit more than one movie. You can see as many as you want basically a month. And there's going to be some months I probably won't go.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
then there might be a month where you go and see 4 or 5 movies and you've totally made your money back.
From the movie theater standpoint, they are making money on the stupid tickets anyways.
I know,
so
concessions.
It's a concession. So for them, it just makes total sense. It's like, this is the first time somebody said something out of a movie theater that made sense. Like,
well, I mean,
we're jacking up the price for 3D movies. Everybody's like, I don't want 3D movies. Well, we have to pay more.
This is what MoviePass was trying to do all over the place. But I mean, they're technically still around. They're still trying, those MoviePass guys. So, good on them. But I mean, the theaters doing it themselves makes all the sense. I wish and hope a similar thing will come to Canada. They've got a monopoly on cinemas here. It's all just Cineplex Odeon here.
I mean, the other thing is too, it's like it makes very little sense to have a universal movie pass because I don't know about you guys, but there's like one theater in the area, maybe 2, that I would go to on the regular.
Sure.
And if you chose me, if you told me I would pay less if I just went to one.
Yeah.
I'd be completely okay with that.
And I mean, it's a third party, so they're taking their cut. Of course, the theaters weren't super on board with that, so MoviePass always struggled. But them doing it themselves, where they're like, you got to come to our theater. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. It seems reasonable.
Both the good theaters in my area are AMC. So
maybe you get on that Stubbs A list. Who knows?
Well, I mean, I could mention it to the wife. The honest truth is that we very rarely have the time to take everybody.
Well, yeah, but it's not as though it would be $20 a month for all of you to go. That is one person, and it's non-transferable. Right. Of course, there's going to be somebody out there who's going to try. Like, why can't I let my kid go and see a movie? And I see, but like, no, come on, that makes it's $20 a month for one person. That makes sense. It's tied to you, so seems fair.
Okay, WISA gained some new members, including TCL and Atlantic Technology. Atlantic Technology, of course, makes speakers, and TCL makes TVs that we like. So the WISA is the wireless connection thingy that's supposed
wireless speaker. I don't know if it's association or so. Whatever
be.
It is. It might as well be. It works.
Amalgamation. It's probably amalgamation. LG, Microsoft Xbox, and Klipsch have shown the most prominent support so far for WISA, with actual WISA products coming this year. So, the idea here is that we're going to see having some sort of universal standard for wireless support that works is not necessarily a bad thing, but it's like anything else. I mean, we've got Bluetooth.
Yeah.
Everybody's mad at that for one reason or another.
But I mean, WISA has been at this for years. And
I know.
Finally seeming to get a foothold in a real way. I mean, this all could fall through, but it seems to be actually moving in the right direction.
My experience with WISA was that it was better than Bluetooth.
Yeah.
So, I'm
lower latency, less
for
compression.
Yeah.
So hope it works.
So they'll probably fail, and we'll be stuck with Bluetooth.
They say,
which sometimes does not connect from the headphones in my ears to the phone in my back pocket.
They say that WISA, the standard, is capable of working all the way up to Atmos and DTS:X, and that the implementations we've seen thus far have been limited to 7.1. But
that's technically Atmos.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but
maybe that's what they're talking about.
It could be, but hey, the more the merrier. And if it gains traction and it's becomes more of a universal standard where it's like, yeah, I buy my TV and I can get speakers and I know it's going to work together and identify what speaker is in what position and stuff without an AV receiver. For the snobs among us, maybe that won't be good enough, but for a lot of people it will. So, yeah,
I'm 100% before this. Apple had their services event. Here's what they announced. First of all, remember when Apple used to innovate? I
don't know.
Remember when Apple came out with the iPhone, everybody went, I don't need this thing. I have a phone. And then 2 years later, everybody was like, how did you live without this thing?
That was the big one. The iPhone is by far the biggest one.
I mean, I still think the iPod was pretty revolutionary. Of course, the iPad as
But
well.
I mean, as everyone always points out, it's not as though there weren't portable players that you would download music onto. Those existed. It's just the iPod did it a bit better. And they had the big thing was that they launched it alongside iTunes, where they had a storefront where you could get all the music for $1 a song. That was what made the iPod a big deal. So
all right, so here's their service: Apple News Plus. I guess everything's
you got to have the plus in there. Yeah,
this is the new little lowercase I, a new X.
It really is.
300 magazines and a few newspapers, $10 a month, only on iPad, iPhone, and Mac for now. Because when you want to read a newspaper, what you really want to read it on is your Mac. Apple Card. I keep seeing articles talking about this, like just the headlines, like this is why the Apple Card is good for everybody. I'm like, just can't imagine why I would have this.
It's a credit card.
Apple Card, U.S. only credit card from Apple, backed by Goldman Sachs and MasterCard. Well, because when you want quality backing you want the people that caused the financial global crisis.
I love that Onion headline that they put out this week, where they're like, all the people in the financial sector saying it's been a while since we caused a complete global meltdown. I think it's about time we get on that.
Yeah, God, it's about time. Goldman Sachs, dude. I would have changed my name. 2% cash back, updated daily. I don't know what does that mean.
It means that whatever you purchase, you get 2% in cash back that day. You don't have to wait till the end of the month.
Who cares? 3% cash back on Apple purchases. Use it via Apple Pay or a physical card that never expires. Because when you lose it, you want to make sure somebody can use it forever.
That's right. It's
Apple Arcade, subscription gaming service with 100 plus games at any given time. No price announced yet on that one. 100 plus games.
That sounds very similar to that what is the Xbox Game Pass, which is a terrific deal. Xbox Game Pass. That's awesome. So this is Apple's stab at it.
Apple TV app already existed on the Apple TV hardware and iPhone and iPad, but now it's coming to Macs and will be built into TVs from Samsung, Sony, LG, and Vizio. It'll also come to Roku and Amazon Fire devices. Gee, I wonder who's left out of the cold on this one. So pretty much only Google being left out. And now your iTunes TV and movie purchases and rentals will show up in it, along with any of your compatible subscription services. So it's their one-stop shop except for Netflix or anything Google. So anything except for their competitors. I guess Disney Plus probably won't make it here either, but whatever.
Well, I mean, interestingly, Amazon is in there. So they seem to have been buddy-buddy now. They're getting along, Apple and Amazon.
Whatever. We'll see how long that lasts before they
That's right.
before they disable their app or they hamstring their service. Apple TV channel, sign up for streaming services directly within Apple TV app so that Apple can take a cut. So yeah, I guess those are live TV. Is that live TV?
So what the heck is in there? The TV channels, it's like HBO Go or Now or whatever it is.
Oh, right, whatever that is.
And like Amazon Prime Video and
for all of your lip sync issues.
Showcase and Epics and those things, or Showtime or whatever the thing is. So those a la carte streaming service channels, they're like, now you can sign up for them directly within the Apple TV app. They call it Apple TV channels. Everything shows up there in one sort of aggregated view. But now Apple gets to take their cut because you signed up through them instead of, just the service getting all of the money. So whatever.
And Apple TV Plus is a subscription streaming service with original content. Yes. No price announced. They spent $1 billion. They had a bunch of celebrities on board to make PG-rated content.
Yep. They're like Spielberg, Oprah Winfrey, Jennifer Aniston, Steve Carell. These are our people. They had a whole bunch of names on a list. They announced pretty much nothing as far as pricing or titles or anything goes, but they're like, this is our streaming service. If Disney can do it, so can we. But, Disney kind of had a back catalog of stuff you might actually want to watch. Apple's like, well, we're going to create it all from scratch, and it's all going to be family friendly, and you're all going to buy it.
Let me just make a wild prediction here about this. What they're going to do is they're going to treat each one of these content creators as auteurs and let them do whatever the heck they want. And it's going to be mostly miss, a couple of hits, and mostly self-serving crap. That's kind of the way that I look at this. If you look at the Jungle Book thingy it wasn't really Jungle Book. It was a Jungle Book, the one that Netflix, the guy, Andy Serkis.
That version of Jungle Book. Yeah. It was Andy Serkis.
That came straight to Netflix.
It did.
I mean, everybody looked at it and went, it was his pet project. It was all this, motion capture animal
did a better
thing.
one, Jon Favreau, just a couple of years prior.
Right. And and it was that. I mean, that was it, and it just sort of everybody looked at it and went, well, I mean, it's interesting. It's interesting, like tech demo, but it sucks as a movie, essentially. And I think that's what you're going to see a lot of. And that, I mean, I think this is a very freshman move, but maybe they won't. Maybe they'll. I mean, because what the thing that Marvel has done, and I think DC did it too. They just they backed the wrong horse there. But the thing that Marvel has done is they've kind of curated the storyline and made sure that, hey, you direct your movie the way you want to direct it, but these are the beats that you have to hit, and these are the people you have to use.
Yeah.
And if you want to use more people, you use more people. Use less people, there's less people. I don't care. But these are the beats that you have to hit. I looked at, if you looked at the first Avengers movie, to me the perfect example is the Thor Iron Man fight.
Sure.
Where literally at the very end, Chris Evans as Captain America looks up and says, "Are we done now?" And that's literally the end of the fight. It's like Josh Whedon did. Did I do the fight that you said I had to do? I did. Okay, can we get back to all the funny talking now?
Contractually obligated fight. Yes.
That's exactly what that was, and I absolutely believe that's what Marvel's done, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not.
Seems to have worked for them.
It has, but then again, you look at DC, and they're like, we're going to go behind the vision of Zack Snyder, who straight up believes that Batman kills people, and anybody who doesn't agree with that is a child,
kind of
or a man.
Fundamentally misses the point of the character, but there you go.
So, but when you just let like artists who are great artists do what they want, you get Ghost Rider 2. If you have not seen Ghost Rider 2, you should not see Ghost Rider 2. But Nicolas Cage is like unfettered Nicolas Cage, and it is a sight to behold.
Yes, it is.
It is
rather entertaining.
It's entertaining in a, like, there should be some sort of game that you can play that ends up with you drunk at the end, but there's no game that you can come up with for this movie that will not end you up in intensive care at the end of it, because everything he does is nuts. So that's what I'm afraid of. Maybe it won't be, but that's what I'm afraid of. I would rather see them like Steven Spielberg. Okay, great. That's a good name. But Steve Carell, Jennifer Aniston, some of these these actor types who have also done a little bit of directing, I don't know that they've got necessarily the all around skills that they need, because that's a really rare.
As long as nobody's too mean, because apparently that's been the most common note from Tim Cook. He's like, "Do they have to be so mean?" Tim
Cook, I'm sorry, dude. I was never a Steve Jobs fan, but boy. You did not exactly. It's like, I feel like if we could see Steve Jobs' shoes and your feet in them, they would be like big old clown shoes flopping around. All right, let's get some comments from our listeners here. Brian wrote us a while ago when he was trying to figure out why he was so underwhelmed with the performance of his Onkyo 787 receiver and RBH speakers. We said that the equipment itself was good, so barring some sort of malfunction, it had to be a problem with the setup. Perhaps room acoustics or genuine need for more power, since we didn't notice the room size and seating distance, and the 787 doesn't have pre-outs, so it's powering all 9 of the speakers itself. Based on some of our other advice to other listeners, which is kind of why we do this, he experimented with hanging heavy blankets to reduce early reflections, manually adjusting the equalization, and finally rerunning the auto setup using a different microphone placement than he initially used. And altering the mic placement seemed to do the trick. That's not uncommon. When he first ran the auto setup, he had spread out the positions as much as possible, including the 2 love seats on either side of his L-shaped couch. This time he kept the mic much closer to the primary seat in the middle, basically just sticking to the 3 seats in the middle. It sounds amazing and powerful now, and it made the seats way out to the side sound a little bit better too. So,
yep,
this is basically, when you give it, when you put your mic in non-optimal locations when you're trying to do your auto setup, essentially you're saying to the receiver, this is how my room sounds so different everywhere. You can't do much with it, right. So do as little as possible. If you remember last week when we talked about that one person who had 2 different, they set up room treatments, and the second time the EQ seemed to do more. This is exactly what we're talking about. His EQ was basically doing very little, and it may have been hurting the middle seats just to try to make the side seats better by keeping the mic position close. The seats that people are actually sitting in suddenly,
Yeah, we're doing a spatial average, and we like to keep all the microphones basically within like a 2-foot radius at the most, more or less, you start in the middle, maybe go 2 feet to the left, 2 feet to the right, maybe just 1.5 feet to the left, 1.5 feet to the right, but keep it all within sort of a 2-foot radius bubble, and you get that spatial average, and then it can EQ quite effectively. So good to hear. Glad that device panned out, even though it wasn't the device we directly gave to him. But we got there.
We could have if we had all the information. All right. Matt works in TV sports broadcasting for one of the Canadian cable TV companies, and specifically for MLB broadcasts.
Mm-hmm. You know where this is going.
I have a feeling I know where this is going. He's actively trying to advance the use of live Atmos broadcasts, which is a topic that Infinite Gary was asking about a few weeks ago. Matt says that pretty much all of the changes would only need to happen in mixing. There's already a plethora of microphones of different types strategically placed throughout the venue, which I would have guessed would have happened anyways. The various sound stems are already isolated from one another: crowd noise, on-field sounds, announcers, commenters, shotgun and parabolic mics, etc. So it's more a matter of taking the existing mic feeds and just mixing them in a different way to create live Atmos. Matt heard an example of an NHL game in Atmos and found it highly effective and enjoyable. The announcements and horns came from overhead, just as they do when you're in the actual arena, so it was that much closer to being there in person. That said, the largest Canadian hockey broadcaster doesn't even do full 5.1 mix at the moment, despite all the necessary equipment being present already. They've deemed it too complicated and not worth the expense, so the chances of live Atmos obviously seem slim from that perspective. And that's, I think if I remember correctly, what I kind of said was what we need is so when the image change, when you switch cameras, the audio should automatically grab the right mics.
Yeah, and put things in the correct positions and that spatially.
Right, and that seems to be what seems to be lacking here is that automation. What he's saying is that it's a mixing standpoint, and that sounds like it's not automated at all, which would mean that there's got to be somebody who's like, okay, choose this mic, choose this mic, choose this mic. Okay, we switch cameras, now choose these different mics, and they can't do that on the fly that quickly.
I mean, I guess you can set up presets beforehand, so that you should be able to.
I mean, I would think that.
Yeah.
I would think that. The problem would be like those
time to set up those presets, even, right?
Right.
So,
well, so the individual cameras that are around, you could more easily do it, but the ones that fly overhead with the cables and stuff like that, those would actually almost have to be like a GPS sort of thing, which sounds like occasionally the sounds are going to be coming from the floor, and the announcers are going to be coming from the floor, and the hockey players going to sound like they're on the ceiling because something got a little screwy. So
I get this
technologically.
I mean, the amount of mixing that does need to be done for an Atmos soundtrack. If you've got all of these various things each being treated as an object, but then you need to steer each of those objects in real time, it makes all the sense when it's pre-recorded content and you can put some time and money into doing this, but doing it on the fly live, I'm like, yeah, I can see that being more like, what people care about? Hearing the commentators clearly, and, maybe when there's a good body check, you hear the crunch, and that's about what people really care about.
That is, yeah. This is like almost an AI, and I use that term AI sort of lightly, because people think algorithms are AI, and I don't consider an algorithm AI. An algorithm is just a program set of go-to statements, basically. If then and go-to statements is essentially what it is, and I don't consider it to be AI. But that when you say AI, people are really talking about algorithms, and that's what this is. Go to this camera, use these mics. Go to this camera, use these mics. Go to these camera, use these mics. And then if you're on the
if you can get it to as the camera is moving, here is how the sound should change in response to that camera movement.
But I honestly don't. Making it into an object, I think, is probably well above what you should be doing. I mean, I actually think putting it in 7.1, with the pans between the different channels, your left and right, and your surround backs and stuff like that, being such that it kind of directs the sound upward, which you can do, will allow your DTS X or your Dolby Atmos surround up mixer to do it for you in a way that's a lot more. I think it would put the onus then onto the receiver. Therefore, you still would only be mixing in channels, but you would keep that pan so that it would tell the Atmos what to do. And I think that's a lot easier to do it channel wise than it would be to try to do it through an object based.
Well, between this and WISA, maybe people will actually start listening in 5.1 in 2020.
Did you get that article I sent you?
Oh yeah, the 10 key things to a great home theater.
Ultimate
home theater.
The number one. SoundBar.
Yep, number one was a Vizio soundbar, a 36-inch Vizio soundbar.
I was like,
And they did
so
have a
sad.
projector on there, but it was like a portable, almost handheld projector.
I
I'm
know.
like, that is the ultimate home theater, is it? And
Ultimate home
was there
theater.
a screen? I don't think there was a screen in that list. Was there?
I don't
Maybe
remember.
there was, but
I just scrolled through it
no
after I
subwoofer.
saw the. Well, there was a subwoofer
oh, part of the
in
soundbar.
quotes, part of the soundbar.
Okay.
It also had wireless surrounds on that, but still.
Ultimate.
All right, JR wanted to share the struggles he had for anyone who might be using a combination of a Samsung QLED, a QLED. This is a Q8FN in his case, an Onkyo Receiver, an RZ730 for him, and an Apple TV 4K. He discovered after 3 weeks of talking with Samsung, Onkyo, and Apple engineers that no combination of regular user settings will allow Apple TV 4K content to play in both HDR and Atmos at the same time. If you turn... Why would you want that? If you turn off HDMI UHD color in the Samsung, Atmos will work, but not HDR. And if you turn it back on, HDR will work, but not Atmos on the Onkyo receiver. No amount of Googling or talking with engineers from all three companies could sort it out. But JR found a workaround. First, you keep the HDMI UHD color in the Samsung turned on. You need it for the HDR. Next, you hold the tone button on the front of the Onkyo receiver and then press a return button on the front panel. When doing that, you can access the EDID settings menu. Change it from... How did you find this? Change it from mode 1 to mode 2. Now Atmos will work with an HDR signal, but we're not done yet.
No.
With the Onkyo's EDID in mode 2, the Apple TV 4K will no longer auto-detect that your Samsung can do HDR. So the match dynamic range setting won't work. But you can manually set the Apple TV 4K to output a 4K HDR. Everything will be converted into HDR, but at least HDR and Atmos will play at the same time. If you want SDR, you can manually change the Apple TV 4K, so that's the workaround. What?
Yeah. I mean, this is by no means an impossible combination because plenty of people have Samsung TVs and plenty of people have Onkyo receivers. Plenty of people have
What
Apple
the heck
TV
is mode
4Ks.
2? What is that?
Yeah, so I
What's
mean, the
mode
EDID,
2?
that's the extended display identification, which is supposed to say, here's all the formats I can handle. But for I don't, maybe mode 2 just like stops it at the AV receiver and doesn't pass through what the thing upstream the television says. Because that's what it kind of sounds like, right? It's like, oh, you, the Onkyo, you can handle Atmos and HDR. That's okay. But I can't tell what the TV upstream from you is. So I can't auto-change, says the source. Yeah, that seems to be what's going on there. Bizarre stuff. HDMI is not plug and play. That is useful knowledge to have in our back pocket in case anyone asks about that particular combo. So I appreciate that, JR.
I'm going to try to remember that, but there's very little. I mean, these are all very popular devices.
Yes,
so
very much.
You're right. This is definitely something that can happen, but God help us if we have to tell somebody to do this. They should be able to fix this.
And it is a workaround, not a true solution because you can't,
because you still have to switch to SDR.
You have to tell the source what to output manually, depending on the content. Joy.
Daniel. Let's get to the questions here. Daniel has an Marantz SR6011. He wants to connect it to both an LG B6 OLED 4K HDR and a BenQ W1070 projector, which is, of course, 1080p. Okay, first you're going to want to press the button on the front and then press return 3 times.
Go into developer mode.
Go to developer mode. Now, if you don't know how to program in C++, then you're going to want to get the... No, shut up. On this older receiver, a Marantz SR5009, it did not pass through HDR at all, so he was not sending HDR to any of his sources, only 4K SDR. He could use the SR5009's mirrored HDMI outputs. He would then connect one of those to this HDMI outputs to the monoprice HDCP 2.2 to 1.4 converter, and he would connect the output from that to the monoprice scaler. That way, 4K HDR 2.2 signals could be turned into 1080p, HDCP 1.4 signals to feed his BenQ projector. That all worked fine. So basically, just so that if all of those acronyms made you just fall asleep, wake up. Basically, what this means is that if you can't connect, we've talked about this 1,000 times before, but you can't go out from a source into a 1080p and a 4K display at the same time because it'll default to the lowest common denominator.
That's
it will
right.
not put out 4K to one and 1080p to the other. It'll put out 1080p to both. So by having the monoprice HDCP 2.2 to 1.4 converter, it sees 2.2, sends out 2.2 and 4K to both, and then he uses a scaler to get it back down to 1080p for the one that was 1080p.
That's right.
Okay. But now he wants to retain HDR and Dolby Vision when he's using his QLED. So QLED,
No,
right?
OLED.
It's OLED.
That's
OLED.
OLED.
Okay, OLED. But of course, it needs to be SDR when he's using his projector. The monoprice devices don't convert HDR to SDR, and if his projector is connected to the mirrored output of his SR6011, even with the two monoprice converters attached, his sources refuse to output HDR at all. He's still stuck with 4K SDR, which defeats one of the purposes of his receiver upgrade. So he's hoping he could use the Zone 2 HDMI output. That way, the projector is completely unseen by the sources when Zone 2 is turned off, and they will send 4K HDR to his OLED. Then he turns on Zone 2 when it's projector time, and the sources limit themselves to SDR, and he can still use a 4K SDR signal thanks to his monoprice converters. But when he turns on Zone 2, the audio is all two-channel only. Is there a way to retain for full surrounds? This should be. Isn't there?
Yeah. So let's say let's forget about the projector for a moment, right? Let's just say you had an SR6011 and you connected the Zone 2 HDMI output to another AV receiver that can do full surround sound, full immersive audio, whatever. That will work. So the Zone 2 HDMI output is capable of outputting a full surround sound signal, a full immersive audio signal. That's not the limitation. The issue that is affecting Daniel here is that the W1070 projector has a pair of stereo speakers built into it.
Oh God!
So the receiver,
it's only seeing the two channels that they can do.
That's right. The receiver is detecting when Zone 2 is on. That Zone 2 is connected to a stereo playback device because it's there. It's got stereo speakers built in, so it's saying, "Oh, okay, there's a stereo playback device on the end of this. I have to limit everything to 2 channels to play to that." And then now that would get sound coming out of the BenQ projector itself, but of course he doesn't want that, so he has silenced that audio. But then when he goes to turn on his main zone, which is connected to his full surround sound system, and sets both the main zone and Zone 2 to the same source, so that the video can be sending out to the Zone 2, everything is limited to 2-channel because, again, it's that lowest common denominator issue where it's like, well, one of these things is stereo only, so that's all I can send everywhere. I can't send surround sound to one zone and stereo from the exact same source to Zone 2 at the same time. Yeah, this is an issue. So, I mean, you can silence the BenQ's speakers, but the AV receiver is still going to detect that they're there. I did a little digging around on AVS forum because some other people were doing kind of similar things, and some people resorted to physically opening up the BenQ projector and physically disconnecting the speakers entirely, which seemed to work for some people. But
I don't know about that.
I know, because that's like a chipset thing where you think even if the speaker is like not wired, mostly they were doing that just to completely silence it, as opposed to just having to turn the volume all the way down and pressing the mute button on.
And if that right there doesn't tell you why you should not go to the AVS forum for advice, I don't know what does. I mean, when the advice is open up your projector and start cutting wires, come to us, please.
So, yeah.
Is there a way to set the monoprice so that it doesn't accept audio at all?
The monoprice?
Yeah, either one of those.
Nope, because those are just converters for the video side of things. I mean, there's a couple of really janky solutions I came up with. I mean, number one, you could separate the audio signal from the video signal for all of your sources, which would be a huge hassle. You know, it would involve getting essentially an HDMI matrix switch.
Right.
And separating audio and video for all of your sources. So that kind of defeats the purpose of like having an AV receiver with a ton of HDMI inputs because you're not even using it as the switch anymore. So the crazy solution, God, this is so dumb, but the crazy solution that could potentially work is you get a second AV receiver.
This is already stupid.
Well, I know, but you get a second AV receiver, you plug the Zone 2 HDMI output from your first receiver into the second receiver, which you then set up to have surround sound of its own. So it's now stripping off the surround sound. You know, as far as the source is concerned, both AV receivers that it's connected to can handle surround sound, so it's sending surround sound even out of the Zone 2 output of your first AV receiver, but the second AV receiver is now stripping off the surround sound and sending only video to the BenQ projector. So the second AV receiver is there strictly to strip the sound off. It's not even playing the sound because you haven't connected your speakers to the second AV receiver. It's just stripping off the sound and passing the video on to your BenQ. I mean, that's insanity. But, you know, it doesn't have to be an expensive AV receiver.
The cheapest one I found with Atmos is $219.99 at Accessories for Less. It's a Denon AVR S730.
Yeah, because, I mean, it doesn't have to have good, you know, auto correction or anything like that. It just has to be compatible with the same audio formats as your SR6011, so that as far as the HDMI is concerned, it's seeing two AV receivers that can both handle all the same.
So you're literally just using this as a switch. You're not using it as a...
You're not even using it as a switch. You're using it as an audio stripper.
Yeah, it's powering... It's not powering any speakers whatsoever.
It's not powering any speakers. It's not doing anything other than separating the audio from the video after it's gone through the HDMI 2 output of your SR6011.
I got a better idea, dude. Get another projector.
That is the other solution, is to get a new projector that can do 4K and HDR signals, just like your LG OLED can, and then you can go back to the mirrored output if you want. Not deal with any of the Zone 2 stuff.
No, okay, so really I think the two solutions that you really have that are, I think, viable and not completely lame and weird is... First, accept that when you're watching, I know you're going to hate this. Accept that when you're watching
your projector,
you're going to use your surround up mixer, and that you're going to hope that it does a good job.
That is a terrible, but okay.
and that you're going to use that as motivation to save up for a new projector.
Right. Yep.
I mean, I don't think buying another receiver maybe $250, so I guess probably shipping.
That's cheaper than a 4K HDR projector.
Oh, for sure, but you know.
I said it was crazy before I said it. I just said it might work. That's all.
Your other, I guess, option is to look online at like Craigslist or eBay or Audio Gone, some of those other things, and look for a used one. Like the I've got 3 channels blown in this.
Right. But I mean, if you are doing Atmos in your main zone, then the second AV receiver still needs to be Atmos compatible. If you don't want to limit, if you're fine with limiting yourself to 5.1 or 7.1 when you're doing Zone 2 with your projector, then there's that to consider as well. Yeah, I know.
That's why I said the cheapest one that was Atmos compatible. It's on sale right now, Accessories for Less for $220. So, yeah. Infinite Gary says, when did TVs first start including TosLink audio outputs? He's never really noticed, but since he's always used external sources and sound systems, but he's pleasantly surprised when he found the TosLink output even on some of his oldest TVs. Was there always one there, just on every TV? Not always. I mean, at some point there were TosLinks.
As soon as HDTV was a thing, because HDTV signals, the over-the-air signal, always contained Dolby Digital 5.1. So from then on, you always had an optical output on every HDTV. That was about it, as far as I can tell, right? Like right when HD TVs came out.
I think so, yeah. Front wides. Gary's Atmos setup uses some Marantz SR6011. It can't do front wides, apparently, but this is Gary, so expanding his setup from 7.1.4 at present to 9.1.4 is definitely under consideration. He really only has one subwoofer in whatever this setup is.
In this setup, he has one subwoofer.
Is this that bedroom one?
Yeah, it is the bedroom one.
The place least likely to ever need wides, but okay. What's the experience when going from 7 speakers to 9? Subtle or easily noticeable? Are certain sounds played out of the wide speakers that don't play out of any other speakers? Is there a particularly good movie that shows off what front wides will bring to the experience? I mean, remember, they're basically becoming your first reflection points, and there is no content that is specifically designed for front wide, so to ask if there is specific sounds, that comes.
It was the DTS Neo X titles that used it more than anything, because those were the ones.
But they're still going to be derived. They're going to be derived from this.
It's
in between.
It's discrete in those Neo X titles, and I was going to say Dread. Dread was the best example I've ever heard.
Okay.
of the front wides actually doing something. The Carl Urban Dread.
Yeah. The one that's good.
Yeah,
Not
it's
the
a good
other
it's a
one.
good movie nonetheless. Yeah, regardless. So, and that has a Neo X soundtrack, which you don't have a Neo X decoder anymore, but it'll still work. You'll still get the front wides using the Neural X up mixer. Although you can't do 9.1.4, even if you get yourself like a Denon X
Yeah, it's
8500H.
Gotta do 2, right?
Because Neural X and DTS X are limited to 11 speakers. So you could do 9.1.2, or you could do 5.1.4 plus front wides. You could turn off the surround back speakers to get front wides going in there with 4 overheads. So given that is a DTS Neo X soundtrack on that, 9.1.2 would actually be the way it was encoded on the disc originally. So it would be fine to listen to it that way. But yeah, it was a good example because they had, they had several, lots of bullets going around, and several panning and sort of circling type of things like that. And they did make use of those front wides. So that was there. Now, all of the sounds in any soundtrack will always be audible, even if you go down to mono. It'll just continually down mix all of the sounds into however many speakers you're using. So it's not as though when you add front wide speakers, suddenly you'll be hearing sounds you literally never heard before because there were no speakers present to play them or something. No, the sound in any soundtrack is always down mixed into however many speakers you're using, even all the way down to 1. But the placement of the sound can be that little bit more precise. I mean, if you just do the setup portion of the disc to let you know that all the speakers are in fact discreetly playing sounds, I mean that's the most obvious way to hear something come out of the front wide and only the front wide.
But is this going to be a major difference in his listening experience?
Well, no, I mean I can't say that. It's not as big as the difference as going from 2.1 to 5.1. That is a much bigger difference than this.
Sure.
I think it is, well, okay, so if you're listening to Dolby Surround up mixer, it's no difference at all because it doesn't use front wides at all. If you're listening to an actual Atmos title, there might literally never be a sound coming out of your front wide speaker because it'll only be there if an object happens to pan through that location. And very often on a lot of Atmos discs, they're only mixing the floor level in channels still and not using any objects in the floor level. So if they're not using objects, you'll never get anything out of a front wide speaker. So mostly it's that Neural X up mixer that'll make use of them, because then any sound that's somewhere between a front main speaker and a surround speaker will get moved into that front wide speaker. And I like to use the game mode because it does that the most discreetly. And you can hear things coming out of those front wide speakers. I would have to call it subtle. You can't really call it anything other than subtle. It is not.
I was gonna say, yeah, it'd be hard to call it anything.
But I do think
since
it is,
most of the time it won't be doing anything. That's not subtle. That's non-existent.
But I do think it is noticeable if you're the type of person who notices those things. Gary, we know, is the type of person who's like, he wanted surround backs because he notices and appreciates that difference. A lot of people will not notice it or not care about it.
But now, in order to notice this, you're going to have to get rid of your surround backs or get rid of one of your overhead speakers.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, so he would need a different AV receiver because the SR6011 just can't do front wides full stop. But if you got a different receiver, I mean, given that most of what I hear out of front wide speakers is because I'm using Neural X to upmix, and I don't use surround back speakers in my current setup, I have front wides instead. That's sort of the way I would lean, because Neural X only uses 11 speakers anyway, and I still want to keep 4 overheads. So, yeah.
So he's got about 6 feet in terms of front to back distance from his front main speakers to his side surround speakers. Okay. That's a direct line, I guess? Or is the speakers on the side walls? No,
yeah. So imagine you got your front speakers in front of you, you got your side speakers, and then just the strict front to back distance is about 6 feet. So it's the diagonal or the curve would be longer than that. Yeah.
Would he just put the front wide speakers exactly halfway between? Now, remember, Gary, this is where your first reflection point is supposed to be for your front speakers. So where's your first reflection point? Put them there, aim them sort of towards you. Yeah, and I mean, honestly, if you're going by an angle, it'll always be at a 60-degree azimuth angle, right? Plus or minus 60 degrees to the left and the right. That is just mathematically where the sound is going to be as your first reflection point. So you can work it out depending on how wide his room is, but his room is
no, but even if the room is super wide, it's still going to be a 60-degree angle. It's just where it's going to be, to bounced off like a billiard ball. So that's where it's going to be. So yeah, you can do it by angle, or you can do it by figuring out where your first reflection point is, using the mirror trick, right? You can do that, but it's not going to be just the strict distance. It's not going to be 3 feet in front of you because your front, left, right speakers are 6 feet in front of you. It's not going to be that type of calculation. Angle or mirror.
Jim has a Denon X3300W. He's got his sources plugged in via HDMI. He uses HDMI standby pass-through feature since he doesn't use full surround all the time. Excuse me. He's noticed that after a day or two, he'll get a black screen from whatever he's watching. It lasts about a second. Then he'll start getting a random black screen more than once. And it'll keep getting worse and worse until he's getting a random black screen every 10 minutes or so. If he completely unplugs his Denon and plugs it back in, things seem fine for a day or two. Then the random black screen will pop up for a second and gradually get worse and worse again. He did some Googling and found a few people describing a similar problem. People have changed HDMI cables, upgraded firmware, done all the usual suspect type of things, but it just seems to keep happening. Any idea what's going on and how maybe to fix it? So in order to have your standby pass-through, you have to have CEC, HDMI CEC engaged. And
is that true? For just standby pass-through?
Well, I guess it depends.
It depends on the exact AV receiver model, because Denon and Marantz, they usually let you separate the various CEC and ARC type features, including pass-through is its own separate line item there. And that
if you do not have to have if you do not have to have HDMI CEC on, then turning that off will certainly be the first thing I would suggest doing. If you have to have it on, then I'm going to blame it because I think it's like, when you got 3 kids and one of them's usually the one that gives you the problems, you go to that one first before you start looking at the other 2. Yeah. And that's unfair, but in the case of CEC, it's often the case. Yeah. So if you can turn it off, turn it off. And if this fixes the problem, then you're welcome. If you can't turn it off, then I don't know, voodoo. No, sacrifice a goat. I got nothing.
This is. Clearly. So it's not as though it never works, right?
Right.
He does a unplug it and plug it back in thing, and that gets it working again. But then, and you're getting these random black screens. They only last about a second, and they get more and more frequent as time goes on.
That sounds like an HDMI handshake.
It does.
That's what it sounds like to me. And by losing that handshake, you're having to reconnect. Yeah. And you get that black screen just for a second is not so bad. You think because you have a JVC projector, you're waiting for like 30, but. That's what it sounds like to me. And having it ramp up, more and more means that handshake is getting lost more and more often. Why is that happening? Well, it shouldn't happen, but it is. So,
the only other thing I can think of, if it isn't just that built in, that, this is a loose connector situation again, that it's that like when you're unplugging it, maybe you're kind of, unplugging the HDMI cable and reseating that at the same time. People don't always list all the variables that they're doing.
I don't know. If it was a heat thing, where over time it was heating up, I would think that, like, as you were watching more and more TV, it would happen more and more often. Not over days. It would happen
in the one session, not yet.
Yes, as it got hotter, it would happen. Because if you've heard of people who are like, all of a sudden I get weird static at one speaker and my receiver shuts down. Well, that's a wire that's heating up and then arcing. Right. Well, that happens during a movie. It doesn't happen, in the first 5 minutes of watching TV.
Yeah, and start happening more and more frequently until you reset the thing, and then it's okay again.
Then it cools down, and it's okay again. Yeah, I would be surprised if it was an HDMI cable seating issue. It just doesn't. What he's describing doesn't sound like it to me. So
yeah, that's our best stab at that, Jim. If having to unplug your receiver and plug it back in every few days is the only workaround, then first world problem. That is a workaround. But
you want to make sure that you check your CEC settings not only in your receiver but in every other device that's in there. Like if you've got an Apple 4K,
every last one of them. Yeah.
Anything that's got HDMI CEC, make sure in the TV itself, the display, turn all of those off. Make sure it's all off. And if you're like, well, doesn't say HDMI CEC in this thing. Well, search for HDMI CEC and the name of your device until somebody tells you. It's Adventure Sync. What? Adventure Sync?
Do you like Onkyo's RIHD? Because that certainly tells you what it is.
Yeah. Adam just bought a new home. Congratulations, Adam. The basement is unfinished, and he will eventually make a theater down there. But for the next few years, the main place for watching TV and movies will be the great room on the main floor. It's completely open to everything, including upstairs. Hardwood floors, bare white walls are as the starting point, and his 65-inch Samsung TV is going to be mounted above the fireplace. Okay. Seating will be a sectional sofa with the main seat directly in front of the TV, about 12 feet. I'm sorry, not 12 eyes. 12 feet from eyes to screen. And as far as sound quality goes, he only really cares about that main seating position. He's given us some diagrams here. I can't really see any of this stuff, but whatever. Oh, right. It is very hardwood floor and very white.
That is some brick. Bare and empty as the pictures go. Of course, there's going to be furnishings in there.
There's going to be furniture in here at some point.
Not going to change the hard floor and the flat white walls very much, though.
Oh, right. And it's open to the kitchen. It's about a bajillion.
Oh, I mean, and it's open to the stairs going upstairs and open to all of the upstairs as well. Yeah, so this is
look like 30-foot ceilings in here. So it's gonna be I like it. I like the kitchen.
Oh, it's gorgeous looking in there. But yeah, as far as really nice. An acoustic environment for a dedicated home theater, less than ideal, we shall say. But hey, this is what he got, so we're gonna deal with it.
All right, so you'd really like to get at least 5.1 surround sound, but do we think it's even worth attempting that much in this room? So he's going to be looking about this fireplace. You can do this. You can.
Oh, you can do 5.1 in here.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Okay, so let's just talk about in general. There's two real ways you can think about this situation. We get this question a lot. I've got a basement or I've got a room I'm going to make into a theater, but for now I'm living in this other thing. Mm-hmm. What do I buy? Well, you need to make a decision, and that is, am I buying for the room I'm in, or am I buying for the room I'm going to be in?
Sure.
And I think in this instance, you should be buying for the room that you're in. You should assume that every piece of gear that you buy is going to be for this room and will never leave. When you go to your home theater,
right,
you're starting fresh.
Yes.
This room has got its own specific challenges that you're going to have to deal with, and I feel like getting a good system for this is not necessarily going to translate into a good system for something else. Plus, you've already got the 65-inch TV, which may or may not work in your basement room, depending on how big it is. Now, as I look at this, I'm looking at the image of the kitchen to the left and the fireplace to the right. Above you is upstairs, so that means there's a wall up there. To me, I see a couch, your sectional couch facing that
the fireplace,
yep, and then the surround speakers being above you and on that ceiling, like on the side of the wall that's the ceiling,
the ceiling of the kitchen.
Yeah.
Okay, so they'd be like they basically be like high up on what would kind of be a back wall.
Yes.
You thinking that?
That's what I see.
I was thinking maybe because he's got like this stairway, this quite tall stairway that's to the right of what he'll be facing. Now that's quite far away over there. But I'm like, you could put a surround speaker over there as one side, and then you've got a wall with windows and that, but there are, sections in between the windows. It's not as though it's just one continuous window. So I'm thinking somewhere over there on the left wall where the windows are, to the left of the fireplace, and then somewhere on the what is the stairway. You can put side surround speakers that way. They'd be quite far apart because this is a wide and open style room, but they'd be to your sides and they wouldn't have to be way up high.
I think it'd go either way.
Yeah. No,
I would not.
Solution.
So you might think to yourself, well, why don't I put the side surrounds on the side, like Rob said, and then put like surround backs above me and way up there? I wouldn't bother.
I wouldn't bother. You could. You could go 7.1, but I wouldn't super duper bother with that. But yeah, no, I mean, either of those placements, it makes sense. And yeah, we both think you can totally do 5.1 in some way in this room.
Right. So speakers need to be in-wall or slim on-wall to keep the look very clean. He's tried the Phantom Center thing before, and he'd really prefer to have a dedicated center speaker. But it needs to be slim enough to go on the fireplace mantle just below the TV. He was thinking maybe in-walls to either side of the fireplace and some sort of slim center. What would we recommend? So in first of all, we have no idea what your room acoustics are going to be like. I mean, right now they're awful.
Oh, right now it's echoing. I'm sure if you went in there and just walked around or said anything, it would literally echo.
Right. So in walls and slim center is going to be your issue here more than anything, because there's lots of people that make on walls and in wall speakers that are fine. I mean, RBH makes in-wall speakers that would be just fine in here. But I think like KEF might be a good solution here, and that's because of the concentric design where this tweeter is inside the woofer. It makes it a little bit more kind of like a directional thing. It will help you with some of the acoustics. It will not fix the acoustics in this room. You will have to do some work here, but it will be something that you could do.
Yeah, in fact, I'm going to reiterate my idea from last week of KEF's HTF8003, which, kind of looks like a large soundbar, but it's 3 passive speakers that happen to share one slim cabinet. That could fit quite nicely just above the mantle there. And, now you're not dealing with installing in-walls, because putting in-walls in that section of wall that's just to the left and right of the fireplace, we don't know what's back there necessarily. It might not be the easiest thing to put in-walls in that construction. Sometimes that's masonry back there or something like that.
My concern with that is that you end up with a fairly narrow, even if the
But he said he only cares about
wide.
one seat primarily.
Well, no, he said he never really cares about, what did he say? He said he cares about, like, that section hole, and that's it. And that's more, the seating, as far as he only cares about that main seating position, which is,
there you go.
The seating will be a sectional sofa with the main seat directly in front of the TV. Okay.
So just one main seating position.
If you really care about one seat, that's fine.
Yeah.
If you care about the sofa, it might not be wide enough.
Right.
And that's where I would be.
This is not
concerned.
a small soundbar by any means. This would be a very large soundbar, but
Well, he's got a 65-inch TV.
to be below a 65-inch TV, and on that mantle, it won't look out of place at all. I recommended that very unit to Richard Gunther over at the Digital Media Zone, and he's been very, very happy with that one. It also has the type of output capability from that form factor where 12 feet away, it'll be okay, which is not always the case with, slim style speakers like that. Right. And it plays low enough to cross over nicely to a subwoofer. So it for me, it checks all the boxes. It costs about $900, but I think you'd be paying darn close to that anyway if you went in walls.
Oh yeah, $300 a piece.
$300 a piece plus the installation. So that's my solution there. Plus, you wanted something very slim or in wall to go as your surrounds as well. And KEF does have their T series speakers. That are very, very slim and available in white. I'm showing the black one here because that's the image that they have on the website, but they are available in white. You definitely want to go with the bigger size. It'd be the 300 series size in the T series. But
you've already answered his next question.
Right? Yeah. There you go. I'm in favor of that.
And regardless if you put those on the side walls or above, on the back wall, like I was suggesting, one of the things he's worried about is angling them down. And I don't really think that's something that you have to worry too much about. Remember, surrounds are not supposed to be directional. It's supposed to be more of a diffuse sound back there. I mean,
in the traditional 5.1 setup, they were meant to be more of an enveloping and diffuse sound. Yeah, things have changed a little bit with Atmos, but we're not dealing with an Atmos configuration here. Let's not go quite that insane.
I would be less worried about having them angled, no matter what side, where you put them. I would be less worried about angling them towards you. I'd just be worried about them making sound from the correct location. Yeah. And I think behind you, above you on that back wall would be okay. I think to the side walls would be okay too.
And if you do want to do it as in wall to make, and paint over them to make them almost completely invisible, KEF has a wide variety of in wall speakers as well. So we're saying KEF all around here.
So subwoofer, he likes the cylinder form factor, yay! And since he really only cares about the one seat, he's planning on just one sub. Would a PC2000 suffice? He knows full pressurization is never going to... Why does everybody have to say that? We know that too. He knows full pressurization is never going to be an option. He isn't looking for full reference volume in here. You haven't put furniture anywhere yet, so we don't know what's going to be where. So yes, a cylinder makes sense from our perspective because it has a low footprint, and which means, and you can even lie it down behind your couch.
Yeah, you can lie it down on its side as well. Yeah.
Yeah, if you really want to.
And when it is standing up, they do have those flat tops now where you can put something on. I mean, it'll rock. It might fall off, but they're quite easy to hide.
Don't put anything glass on there.
Yeah, nothing too fragile.
Yeah. So will it be good enough? Well, I don't know where you're going to put it. So the closer it is to you physically, the more direct sound you're going to get from it. So that shaking the couch thing, you're not going to get a ton of that anyways, unless it's sitting right next to you. But it's a fine choice. I mean, in this room, it's never going to pressurize anyways, but it'll at least put out a bunch of sound.
Yeah, and I mean, it'll never break itself, which is the lovely thing about SVS's subs. I mean, if we're just looking at the size of this room, of course I'd be saying, well, PC 4000 makes more sense while still being a cylinder. It is a much taller cylinder than the 2000, so do keep that in mind. And, of course, a lot more expensive. So, I'm sure those are factors. I mean, will a PC 2000 suffice? Yeah, it'll suffice. It'll suffice.
It will
never break
noise.
itself. There might be instances where some of the ultra low stuff, you'll be like, gosh, I wish that was a bit more loud and powerful. And like, that'll be the case in a room this size. Even a PC 4000 won't pressurize it. But yeah, it would suffice, I would say.
So what about one of those subs that we were talking about the other day where you slide them underneath the couch instead?
Well, those are much, much, much smaller.
Yeah,
and can bottom out.
That's true, but we're only having them underneath the couch. I'm just going for other options here. If he wants the. So what's going to end up happening is you're going to end up getting your home theater at some point, and you're getting your home theater. You're going to get your dual subs because we're going to tell you to, and then you're going to have like this. You're going to fully pressurize the space, and then you're going to come back up to here and like, why did I buy this, $800, $1,000 subwoofer, and it's not doing anything. Really, compared to what's happening
it'll be
downstairs.
doing something.
Comparatively speaking, it's going to feel like it's not doing a whole lot. So I'm trying to think, how little can you do to get away with having just
rather
some
than
bass?
A 10-inch super slim sub that goes under your couch, I would start going tactile transducers instead.
Well, that's what I was thinking too.
Yeah.
Like, get the PC 2000 and then get a butt kicker or something for your couch.
I could get on board with that.
A little bit more of that tactile, but you're going to need something to get you down to, from 80 hertz down to like 35 or whatever at least, so that you can hear those sounds just so they're around. Feeling the stuff that's way lower than that is not going to be very feasible.
Well, then I'd start with the PC 2000, see how that goes, and feel like I would like a bit more tactility, then you add a butt kicker. That makes sense to me.
John upgraded from a Denon S920W receiver to a Marantz SR6012. Man, Marantz is like in the news today. The main reason is because he wants to upgrade from a 5.1.2 to a 5.1.4. Forgot about the 0.2. You need the 0.2. He already mounted a pair of Athena Micra speakers on the ceiling, has another pair that he'd like to mount so that they'll have 4 speakers overhead. The ceiling is vaulted and with the room arranged such that the front and back walls are the low ends of the ceiling and the peak is in the middle. His main seat is about 1.5 feet from the back wall, and he mounted the first pair of overhead speakers 43 inches off the back wall, so they're just over 2 feet in front of him. He called them top middles when they were his only pair of overheads. They're how far in front of them?
Just 2 feet in front of them. So those could be top middles. I mean, you're sort of right on the borderline, but it's a little bit too close to you to technically be top fronts. So calling them top middles is totally fine where they are.
Look-wise and ease of mounting wise, he'd like to keep those speakers where they are and add a second pair 43 inches off the front wall, but that would mean all 4 of his overhead speakers are actually in front of his seats. Would that be a big problem? What would he label them if he kept that placement? Can you move your couch? Like 2 feet forward.
Right. Move your couch just a little bit forward, and then they really are top middles.
They're just, to me, they're a little bit too far forward to be. I mean, I know they are technically within the range or whatever, and they're definitely not top fronts or whatever. They're definitely not that, but they're also kind of not top middles. So can we scoot the couch just a little bit forward so that they are? I mean, I don't understand why he didn't mount them just over his couch. Well, because there was
dealing with where ceiling joists are and where wires have been.
I'm looking at this projector and I don't see any. Well, maybe ceiling joists, but these speakers are tiny. They are a drywall anchor.
I used to love those Athena micro speakers. I'm so sad they disappeared, but that was many years ago.
There's no reason why you couldn't have just used a drywall anchor to hang them. I mean, these things would hang on a. They're not heavy, so. I would. I mean, I hate to say it.
Scooch them back a bit.
I'd scooch them back. I'd either move the couch forward or scooch them back. Those would be my options. And then you could put them, the other ones, wherever the heck you want to put them.
Yeah.
And they'd be top fronts.
Well, you'd
front heights because you can't call them top fronts.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, you'd still have top middles regardless. We're not going to change that. We're going to keep rearmost, wherever they end up being, and continue to call them top middles, then you're going to have some somewhere farther towards the closer to the front of your room, and they will be called front heights. If you can get them at a 45-degree angle elevation-wise, so much the better. That's exactly where front height should go. So yeah, you might end up with if you can, you scooch your current top middles back a little bit so that they're more directly over your seat, or move your seat forward, and then try to have the front heights at about a 45-degree elevation angle, and that'll be very nice.
So he says he can move the existing pair farther back if it absolutely necessary, but because of the vaulted ceiling, they'd be lower than the front pair. Would the difference in height be any problem? No.
Not a whit.
It's literally just the difference between, turning the volume down on those a little bit and the volume up on the other ones a little bit.
And in fact, the auto setup will do a fantastic job of saying, okay, these are slightly closer and setting the distance appropriately. And because they're a little bit closer, maybe they're 1 decibel louder, and it'll do that trim level for you automatically too. So that is no problem at all.
No problem. Chris wants to add a pair of rear Atmos speakers, but he'd rather not drill any big holes in the ceiling, so bother with hanging any more speakers on the ceilings, walls or ceilings. He already has a pair surround back speakers mounted to his back wall. They are a semicircle shaped Klipsch RS41. I guess that's that Mark II. Is that what the II
was
is?
The reference 2 series, so that's where the 2 came from.
And they're only about 10 inches from their tops to the ceiling. Could he put some tiny cube-like speakers on top of those Klipsch surround back speakers with the cubes pointed up at the ceiling to bounce their sound like Atmos modules? You could. I don't think it'll work very well.
You really shouldn't. You really shouldn't.
You can do anything, sir. I'm not going to say that it's impossible, but I'm going to say that while you can do this, it will not give you the effect that you want.
No, it will not. No, with Atmos modules, the upward firing modules, they are supposed to be no higher than the midpoint height-wise of your wall. Yeah. So I am assuming that your walls are more than 20 inches high. And therefore, these are well above the midway point. So upward firing above these already mounted surround back speakers, that is not the solution that we want to use.
I do want to say that he may be thinking, but if I angle them just right, the sound will bounce far enough out, because like a normal might be a 45-degree angle, sure, and that's why you want it to be only halfway up the wall or whatever. What if I change that angle so it's whatever? I'm going to say to you right now, sir, I don't actually think they bounce the sound.
Yeah, we're not really buying that. I think it's all the processing when you say I have an upward firing module and it applies the EQ that Dolby developed. I'm like, I think it's almost entirely that.
That's what I think. I think it's all the DSP and the processing, and the angle is just for your brain.
Yes.
Your eyes look at that angle and say, it is doing the bouncing.
It's going up first, so it must
clearly
be
it's going up.
Down.
I don't think it's just like sitting off axis. It's like when you toe in your speakers, you don't have them pointed directly at you. You have them pointed a little bit to the side. That's what this is.
We also have a bunch of these virtualizing immersive audio like sound bars and speakers and stuff that have no upward firing drivers in it. They're like, and yet it still creates a convincing sense of the sounds coming from overhead. I'm like, yeah, so that's all DSP then, right? That's all equalization and phase manipulation. That's what's going on there.
I don't actually believe they bounce anything.
Yeah, so I'm not in favor of just sticking a couple of tiny little cube speakers this high up and angling them upward and trying to bounce the sound that way. That makes no sense to me. Now, you could go for some quite compact, easily mountable speakers like the Boston Acoustics Soundware that Accessories for Less sells for $70 a pop. Now, they are not as teeny tiny as you might be thinking, right? If you're looking at the image that I'm showing, they look like teeny tiny little Bose Cube speakers or something, but that is a 4.5-inch driver in there. So that is considerably larger than some little 2-inch.
Oh, I've seen these things. Like these are nice little speakers.
Oh, yeah.
They are big, though. They are bigger than you think they're going to be.
Much bigger than you would think looking at the image that I'm showing there. Much bigger.
Mean,
but
the front of that thing is bigger than a slice of bread.
Yeah.
I would say.
Yeah.
The front of that is bigger than a slice of bread, and it's that big, on every side.
Yeah, because it's a 4.5-inch driver in there, plus some bezel around it. But that is something that you could wall mount that right above your existing speaker and have that it'd be a little bit weird because they're not very separated. The other thing you could do is call what are currently your mounted surround back speakers. You just relabel them and mount some surround speakers or surround back speakers lower. But although
I think he's going to end up in the same situation, though. The speakers will be on top of each other, basically.
He also has a shelf clearly below one of these, so it might not be the easiest. So, I mean, Klipsch themselves, they have what they call their Atmos modules. They've got the little bit older models, the R41 from the regular reference series and the RP140 from the reference Premier series. That has now been replaced by the RP500 at a higher price point. The 500 is also a larger speaker, but those are Klipsch's own Atmos modules that are designed normally to fire upwards, but you can just mount them on a wall or ceiling and use them as regular wall-mounted speakers as well. They go for about $300 a pair, but regardless, I'm saying you're going to mount some kind of speaker to a wall or a ceiling and do this properly. I'm never going to say use a little cube and aim it upwards when it's only 10 inches from the ceiling. That's just not going to work.
Yeah, okay, so to go along with what Rob's saying here, I don't think that just taking a cube and mounting it to your wall above your existing speakers is going to be enough. I don't think the separation is large enough. Yeah. I don't think it's a good idea. If you decide that that's what you want to do, that you're like, okay, as long as I don't have to drill into the ceiling, I'm fine. Take your current speakers and lower them as much as you can. Right now, there's one at least above a shelf. Put that one on the shelf.
Sure.
And then mount the other one up as high as you can.
As that height, yeah.
Or higher, all the way up into the corner, if you can.
Like mount the little cube speaker.
The cube speaker up as high as you can.
Not so little cube speaker, as high as you possibly can. Yeah, because I mean, the ceiling is textured in that, so I can see not wanting to drill into that and all that nonsense. But the wall, I mean, he's clearly wall-mounted one speaker, or two speakers, on the wall prior. We're talking about moving what's there and then putting the other ones as high as they can go.
So yes, you will have to, plaster over a couple of holes. But that's going to happen when you move out anyways. Earle is a fellow front-wide advocate. Oh, my God.
There's a theme this week. There's always a theme every week. But this one is
He hears a big difference and definitely prefers having them as part of his Atmos DTS X and DTS Neural X configuration. They seem to widen the soundstage and also bridge the gap between the front left-right speakers and the surround speakers, creating more cohesive and seamless panning and circling effects.
There you go, Gary. There's one person's take.
Yeah. He's got his front wides basically halfway between his front main speakers and his side surround speakers. When he played with their toe in, he wound up with them aiming so that they're slightly off axis when he's in the main listening position. The direct on-axis lines would cross just slightly behind him. Do we agree with that positioning, or would we suggest any changes? How the heck should we know? I mean, if it sounds good to you, then I guess it's good. I mean, that's what it comes down to, right? Because in your room, we should know. They are supposed to be pointed basically at you, or right, very, very close to being on axis to you. So if they're either in front or behind, then that's within the recommendations. But if you've played with it and you found that this is the best one, what are we going to say? No, you're wrong. I mean, you're right.
I mean, the toe in. I mean, there are, as we mentioned in a previous podcast. Many speakers, if you are really truly bang on axis, they don't sound really the way they were intended to. A lot of speakers, you're meant to be at least a little bit off axis, to the left or the right of truly bang on center. So that having played with the toe in and landed on that makes all the sense. That's entirely reasonable. The exact placement, saying that they're basically halfway between the front left right main speakers and the surround speakers, again, it really is the angle and where your first reflection point is. That is where they are supposed to go. It's going to be a 60-degree azimuth angle plus or minus from dead ahead center, or you use the
people seem to think that wides are just like supposed to bridge the gap between the front and the side surrounds, and that's really not what it is. It's supposed to essentially correct that first reflection point. So
it's all about the first reflection point. So 60-degree azimuth, or use the mirror trick on your side wall to find out where your first reflection point is. Put them there.
Regarding the Atmos and DTS X, he does not have any overhead speakers installed, but his receiver definitely says Atmos or DTS X on the front. So 7.2 plus front wides must be a supported speaker configuration for those conformats, right? Does he need to add front heights, or is he already getting the full immersive audio effect with his 7.2 plus front wide setup? Well, we've already said this multiple times, but 7.2 7 point whatever, the surround backs are considered Atmos speakers. That's why it's saying Atmos on there. Or you're not getting the full Atmos effect because you don't have any overhead speakers. And there's nothing that's going to make that happen until you put overhead speakers, and then you're going to have to ignore your surround backs.
if you want four of them while using Neural X,
Right.
So anything with 7 speakers, whether that's traditional 7.1 or it's 5.1.2 or above, that is an Atmos configuration. That is a DTSX configuration. 5.1 is not. If you only had 5.1, it would never light up Atmos or DTSX on the front panel. But as soon as you have 7 speakers going, it is. But all of yours are on the floor level plane. If there are any objects in that floor level, it'll move them around as objects. But when the objects go overhead, you don't have any speakers up there. It'll do the best it can. It'll say, these are the speakers I got. I'll try to make it kind of sound like it's coming from overhead. That's what all I can do, but all I can do is move it around on your floor level speakers. You do need the overhead speakers to get the full immersive audio effect.
So if you were to add front height speakers, the only acceptable place, Wi-Fi approval-wise, would be in the front corners. Is that acceptable, or do they need to be directly above the front main speakers? According to Atmos, they need to be directly above the front main speakers.
Ideally, they would be, yeah.
If the only place you could put them were in the corners, we would say, well, I mean, if that's the only place you can put them, you can put them.
That is still up high. So
yeah. The reality is, I would not bother. I don't think that you're gonna notice any discernible difference by putting front height speakers in there. If you do, I feel like you should tell your wife to put some boxes that look semi like speakers up there, just like, blue tack them to the corners, and then tell you that they're actual speakers when they're not, and then you will have the same effect. Because I don't think that
psychosomatically you'll believe
you will believe that effect is that effect's happening between your ears and not outside of them. My experience with front height speakers has been largely unimpressed.
I'd be if you have side walls, if you don't just have wide open side or something like that, I would be keener to maybe go with something like prime elevation speakers on the side walls way up high and call them top middles. That'll be more noticeable than front heights being in your two front corners. The front heights,
I agree.
Man, oh man, you don't
really
notice them a ton. Don't notice them a ton.
They're really not doing a whole lot.
We've both had that experience. So yeah, we do something to get compromised placement top middles is all right. Again, Dolby's current recommendations, according to their Atmos white paper, is take the width of your room, whatever that might be, multiply that by 0.7, and that is as wide apart as they would ideally like all of your pairs of Atmos speakers to be. Multiply it by 0.5 of the width of your room, and that is as close together as ideally they would like your overhead speaker pairs to be. So when we're saying put them directly on the side walls, that is wider apart than ideal, but that's exactly what something like prime elevation speakers are meant for, is slightly compromised placement like that.
So, Mrs. Earle, if you're listening to this podcast right now and Mr. Earle is saying, hey, this is why we need to put the front height speakers right above our main speakers. If you asked me that question, I would still say don't bother. It's the compromised placement just it seals the deal for me. But in general, the only time I really recommend front heights is if you say I want top middles. Then your only option is front heights. So knock yourself out. James and his family are living in an apartment. The only logical place to put his TV is above the fireplace. He uses a mantel mount, so he's able to pull the TV down and in front of the mantel for a more comfortable viewing height, and then raise the TV back up above the fireplace when he's done watching. The wall behind the TV is 100% brick, and his wife will not tolerate any visible wires, so he's done some very careful cord management, and he's finally happy with the viewing experience now that he has 65-inch C7 OLED, and it's mounted and cable managed in an acceptable way. So time to focus on audio. She doesn't want speaker wires, huh?
Nope.
Good luck. But he has nothing but a Vizio soundbar he's had nothing but a Vizio soundbar for at least 5 years now. It's fine, but he wants a big improvement. However, visible wires are still a no-go, and his wife doesn't want any visible speakers either.
Yup. Gotten used to the soundbar.
Okay.
Yup.
The setup is in a 15 by 15 foot. I'm sorry, 15 and 15 and a half by 10 foot living room, dining room area that is completely open on the left of the kitchen. So it's 15 by a bajillion by 10 foot high.
Not a bajillion, but yes, it is much wider than it is front to back.
The couch is right up against the back wall, opposite the fireplace. Bay windows on the right side. There's a space for his AV equipment to the right of the fireplace, including enough space for an AV receiver. But to satisfy the no wires requirement, there's only a single HDMI cable going from the equipment stand to the TV, and the TV feeds the sound bar with an optical cable. The sources are all plugged into an HDMI switch at the moment. Furthermore, there's a 4-zone A-bus home audio system that has been installed, but almost none of it works properly. Five speakers in the bedroom. 3 don't work at all, and the remaining 2 barely trickle out some sound. Interesting. 3 speakers in the guest room, always quiet and underpowered. 1 speaker in the kitchen. 4 speakers in the living room. They function but don't sound good. All of the connections and equipment for the whole house audio system in a rack in the rear left corner of his living room dining room. He suspects everything was wired incorrectly, but he's never attempted to sort it out.
What a value add that must have been.
Well, I'm glad you paid extra for that nonsense. All right, there's the mantle. There's this. Okay, so I see. Okay. Since his wife does not want any visible speakers, the idea has been floated to just use the existing in-ceiling. No. Do not do the thing that you just said. Don't do that thing.
You didn't even say, let people hear what the idea was. You can see it, other people can't hear it.
Since his wife does not want any visible speakers, I before just use existing in-ceiling speakers, but they are not centered for the TV viewing area, and James doesn't like how the existing speakers sound. That they are, just so you understand, they are what looks to be about 3, like the front. Okay, what would be the side surround speaker would be in front of the right seat on his couch by about 2.5, maybe 3 feet. And the left surround speaker would be to the left of his couch, about 6 feet to the left and 2 feet in front of.
I mean, they're kind of like centered for the whole living room, dining room combo. But of course, his living room is a portion of that, over to the right. So all of the speakers would be like shifted to the left if they were the in-ceilings.
So the answer to your question is no, don't use these speakers in horrible locations. But he asked, he could potentially replace the existing speakers without changing locations. He could potentially rewire so that they're connected to the AV receiver instead of the A-bus whole house audio system. What do we think? No. Should he attempt to use the existing in-ceiling locations for his TV setup? No. No.
That is the clearest, most direct answer we might have ever given. Please don't do that.
If he isn't going to use the in-ceiling speakers, is a soundbar upgrade the best he can do? What about a passive soundbar connected to an AV receiver? Perhaps the Golden... Galden?
Oh, yeah, so that is misspelled. It's always misspelled, but whatever.
Super Array, Super Cinema... I was like, what the heck is that?
There you go.
Super Cinema Array, or what about one of the Atmos soundbars? Could one of those be mounted to his mantle mount so that it moves up and down with his TV? There are soundbars that are meant to do that. I am not in favor of this either. So what my suggestion is end tables.
Okay.
My suggestion is end tables with little plants on them. Okay? That's my suggestion.
This is going to be up front by the fireplace as well?
No. I say continue to use the soundbar as your front, left, right, center situation.
Even
I don't know
like
what soundbar.
Vizio? No sound upgrade at all? Or we're going to replace that with...
No, we can replace that. But
okay.
You've already been okay with the soundbar.
Yes.
Be okay with the soundbar.
Okay, so we're going to keep a soundbar form factor for the front.
And if you have run a wire from your AV receiver to that TV, don't tell me you can't run another wire right next to that water.
The flat wire.
Yeah, there's all that.
I guess you're not painting it to camouflage it into brick, and the flat wire takes up like more surface area because it's flat. Does. Okay.
I would just whatever you've done for the HDMI cable, add the speaker wire to it.
This is a short distance too to the front 3 speaker sound bar to the AV receiver right beside it. So you can use skinny speaker wire without any problem.
Itty bitty. Yeah, itty bitty.
You can use skinny
but then on either side of the couch, I recommend getting some sort of end table.
Okay.
And then speakers on small, like the birds would be perfect.
So you can't get them anymore.
Can't get them anymore, but they have their own integrated stand that raises them up a little bit. You can angle them. You could put them to either side of the couch, basically firing directly into to the couch, directly, straight, left, right, into the couch.
Yeah.
Okay, raise them up. You put them on a book or something like that. They put a plant in front of them so you can't see them.
Okay.
Or plant all around them. Who really cares? These are surrounds. I mean, this is not going to be that big of a deal. So, something to visually hide them from your way. Then the wires get run underneath the couch, around the bottom of the floor. Just tuck them into where the carpet is. If it's hardwood, you might have to pull up the baseboards, but you can usually kind of tuck them in down there as well. Or again, the flat speaker wire, you could put them on the walls and paint them to go around to the side. That is alternatively, if you've got some sort of wireless speaker solution, you could do that as long as there's a plug behind the couch. You would never see any of this. So those, to me, that's how you get your 5.1.
I mean, so if we're keeping that soundbar form factor, I'm back to the KEF again, because that's my favorite one of those. Now, here's a situation where the little bit physically smaller and slimmer HTF 7003 might be the solution for you. Because the 8003 is not small. It is not as small as your current Vizio soundbar. You will definitely see visually very clearly that the 8003 model is bigger than that. But the 7003 is nice and slim and smaller, quite similar to your existing Vizio soundbar. So if that has been acceptable all this time, the 7003 KEF, which is also a little bit less expensive, that'll work. Again, skinny speaker wires can go from that to your AV receiver. Now, I was thinking, since I was thinking KEF, that again, those T-series, super slim on-wall speakers might be acceptable. They're behind your couch, or they do have stands. They can do the same as what Tom is saying and go on some end tables to either side. They're super skinny. They don't really look like speakers, traditional speakers. So I was thinking KEF here again. The other solution, since he mentioned Atmos soundbars, and that is, I could conceivably go with like Sony's Atmos soundbar that has optional wireless surround speakers.
Okay.
Because that gets you away from having to run speaker wire to your surround speakers. How much of a sound upgrade is it over the Vizio? It is, but it's not as much as the KEF passive soundbar would be, for sure.
Right.
So that's a maybe if the convenience of it all being wireless and compatible with Atmos, all built into one thing and not needing an AV receiver at all, if that's all worth it for a little bit of an upgrade from what you have, a little bit of a downgrade from what the KEF would offer, that's where I would stick the Sony Atmos soundbar.
Yeah. I mean, if you can take the KEF speakers and then put them with one of the wireless speaker solutions that we've talked about here, the one from Outlaw or the other one.
Well, you need something with amplifiers if it's that, so it'd be the Amphony.
Or you could go with Yamaha and use their MusicCast system. Because we're about to talk about receivers.
Yeah,
anyways.
because the newest Yamaha AV receivers, you can use a pair of their wireless MusicCast speakers as surrounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that might be a good solution here too.
Yes.
But let's go on. He says if they aren't his main speakers, could the existing in-ceiling speakers be used as Atmos speakers? You can technically do anything you want, but I would not recommend this. Again, they are so not optimally placed that it's.
I mean,
the idea
less optimally less optimally placed for Atmos than they are. Don't use them as your main speakers. We'll say it so many times until you go, okay, I won't. Don't use.
I wouldn't use the one closest to you for anything because they're so poorly placed. I mean, I would.
Plus, you don't like how they sound anyway. It's like, this is all.
The ones that are further away from you, you could say, because again, they're further away, but one's very kind of in line with the right side of the couch, like the person who's sitting on the right side of the couch, and one's way outside the couch.
Yeah.
And then still far up. You could go like those are top fronts. But they're, first of all, who cares about top fronts by themselves? Literally no one should. And they're not optimally placed and weirdly placed. I just think that. Now, I'm not saying that you should just give up on these speakers altogether. We can talk about how to figure out what speakers go where.
There should be a way to make them work properly with your whole house audio system. Although maybe the speakers they installed are just crap speakers, because those
that could be. It sounds to me like it's an amplifier issue, though, that they're plugged into like line level outputs,
or
and they're not getting full amplification.
Maybe
power.
the A-bus head unit is actually a 70-volt system, and they attached it to regular speakers. So you're essentially trying to drive the speakers with line level signals.
Yeah, that's what I think. That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like there's not a real amplifier back there.
Yeah, it does.
as we go through this here, his next thing is, what is a suggestion for an AV receiver? I am going to suggest Yamaha here.
That actually makes a lot of sense. It has to be one of the newest ones. Only the very newest models have the whole, you can use MusicCast wireless speakers as your surround built in. So you can't go back in time to previous models for that feature. But that is,
right.
Like I was saying, like they focus so much on their stupid AI sound modes in their marketing that they completely didn't even mention that. I'm like, that's the killer feature, Yamaha marketing people.
Yamaha is so in love with DSP, man.
Ages.
They're so in love with DSP. They have been for decades in love with DSP. Everybody's like, no one cares about Rock Arena mode. No, we've got 5 Rock Arena modes. I'm like, we didn't care about 1. Why do I care about 5? Do you guys not understand how this works?
Now it's AI. So, yeah.
Anyways, I would go with the Yamaha system. And
like
the reason is because we can make the wireless surrounds work very easily. And if you decide to do your whole home audio, suddenly there's a whole lot of very easy ways to make this work with your existing, with MusicCast in your existing system. To me, I think that, once you figure out this home theater thing, then we can start talking about this A-bus, whatever the whole home audio crap
just get rid of that and put in a MusicCast instead, because that'll work.
And then we just have to figure out which speakers are where and make sure that everything's plugged in properly.
If the wiring is actually a problem, that'll have to be redone. MusicCast can't fix that inherently.
I'll be honest with you, when you're like, oh, these speakers all sound like crap, I'm like, no speakers. I mean, very few speakers
sound
just universally sound that bad. That sounds like a wiring issue to me, or a power issue to me. So we can fix that later. I say get a brand these new Yamaha systems. Get wireless surrounds for your surrounds, so that you're just plugging them in. Everything is hidden behind the couch. There's no wires running from front to back of the room. You get the new SoundBar with the KEFs. And then afterwards you can start playing with this other thing, which again will not have any additional wires being run from your AV receiver to anything, because you'll be able to run it all just fine.
Yeah.
All right. Phil has a dedicated theater room, 2,000 cubic feet total. He's using SVS Ultra Series left, center, and right speakers, dual SB2000s, and he just got a Marantz SR7012 receiver so that he can upgrade to a full Atmos configuration. He was planning on using SVS Prime Satellite and Prime Elevation speakers, but he already has one pair of Axiom QS8 speakers that he's using as his surrounds. He really likes them, and he thinks they sound great in his current 5.2 setup. So should he leave them as is and just add SVS Prime speakers, or should he replace the QS8 so that he has perfectly matching direct firing speakers in all positions? All right, so those of you that don't know, that there's QS4s and QS8s. I've owned both. The QS, and basically they look like a trapezoid that's kind of attached to your wall. On the top and bottom, there are woofers that fire up and down. And on the sides, there's tweeters that fire left and right. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, so they call it a quadrupolar speaker because it's firing in 4 different directions.
And they're all firing in phase. So this is a very diffuse sounding speaker. And when before Atmos, and Dolby rewrote history and said we never ever suggested this, but they totally did. This is what we wanted for side surrounds. Yeah. We wanted very diffuse sounding side surrounds so that we could get that very diffuse, enveloping sound for all of our seats.
Yeah.
And there was no surround backs, and there were no overhead speakers.
Without them being super distracting that's exactly where the sound came from, directly to my side. Yeah.
And a lot of people love those speakers. And I thought I liked my QS8s. I had QS8s on the sides and QS4s on the surround backs. The surround backs were a little bit too wide, and they ended up messing up the entire soundstage. So I basically got rid of them. I don't even remember what I did with those stupid things, to be honest with you. But they are gone. And if you're going to go to Atmos, I hate to say it, Phil, I know you like them, but you should get rid of them. And they have no place in your theater anymore. And I'm not saying that as somebody who doesn't like these speakers. I have owned and liked these speakers. I am saying that as somebody who is, you are looking to get into Atmos. Atmos requires a certain type of speaker, and a diffuse sound is not it.
Yeah. And once you have all of 11 of those speakers going, including now surround backs and 4 overhead speakers, and you're using the up mixer, so that sound is coming out of all of those, the more diffuse sound that you're getting from just your two current side surround speakers, that's all now replicated by many more speakers playing many more sounds from different directions.
Which allows you to be both diffuse when it needs to be because it's coming from multiple directions,
and
or
pinpoint
direct when you need it to be. So I know you don't want to do it, but eBay or Craigslist.
One additional pair of prime satellite speakers. I mean, for what you sell the QS8s for, you should absolutely be able to afford one additional pair of prime satellites as your new side surround speakers.
Yeah. Francisco got an Optoma UHD60 projector when it was released. It was one of the earliest 4K DLP projectors for under $2,000, but unlike the 1500 4K DLP projectors, it uses the larger DLP chip that is only wobbled twice per frame instead of 4 times per frame. Mm-hmm. Now the BenQ HT3550 has been announced. It's the smaller 4-wobble chip, but it's claiming 95% of DCI P3 color plus other picture improvements, all at the lower $1,500 price point. Will it deliver better picture quality than the Optoma UHD60? Would it be worth buying to replace what he has? Without knowing anything about it, I'm going to say no. But Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, I mean, this is I'm very leaning towards yes. From the early previews, like Vincent Teo has done over at HDTV Test, and what's his name? The guy over at Forbes, John Archer. They got to see it over in the European demonstration. Different model numbers in Europe, of course, but it's the same projectors. There are quite a few enhancements, most notably, so they do have this new color wheel that's allowing for the wider DCI color, but they also finally have a dynamic iris going on these DLP projectors, which is a pretty big deal. It drastically improves the full black level. You know, when you're watching credits or it's going to a full black screen, it drastically improves that. Overall contrast between full on, full off is improved. And this is a newer version of the 4-wobble chip that hasn't completely eliminated the little halo of light that the original 4-wobble chip version had. There's still a little bit of a halo around it, but now they're like, it's so small that as long as you have any kind of black frame around your projection screen, it'll fit within that frame and just get completely absorbed. How much do you care about that wider color? Because right now you're limited to 709. In fact, the UHD60 isn't even full Rec 709 because it's one of the brilliant color models, which use the color wheel that is red, green, blue, cyan, yellow, white to boost the overall light output, but it desaturates the color as a result. So it's all about being really, really bright, but it doesn't have super high contrast. It doesn't have the wide color. It doesn't even fully have Rec 709. So how much do you care about the color saturation? Because that's the biggest upgrade, plus the dynamic iris.
If he really cares about it, if one of the reasons he got this was for the brightness, then...
You're right. If all it was sheer light output, if that's your number one thing, you're actually taking a hit there. But I mean, I see the thing is like this one was, close to 2,000 when it came out. It's about 1,700 or 1,750 now, the UHD60. This is like a lower cost one, but they're claiming it's improved. Is it possible for something that costs less to actually be better? By all early accounts, in those ways, it is.
And I guess whenever I get a question like this where somebody's like, oh, I spent $2,000 on this or 1,700 on this, 5 years ago, and here's something new that came out that's still basically a budget model of something.
Right.
Should I change over? A lot of times that was my initial reaction is like, no. I mean, if you are happy with a budget model of something, then every year that you wait, every year that goes by, that same price point, first of all, you get more bang for your buck out of the what you spent, however long ago you spent it. Every year you continue to use it. Like, don't come to me and say, should I upgrade, until you say, this no longer works. What should I buy?
Right.
Because that's the way I operate. I operate with if what I got isn't broken, I'm not replacing it until I have to. I'm not going to go from budget to budget to budget as an upgrade. If I'm going to upgrade, I'm going to upgrade and get something that's, in a different, bracket. Like, let's go full 4K. Let's go full, wide color. Let's go full HDR. Let's go Dolby Atmos or whatever the case may be. But
it's kind of doing those things just happens to be at the low budget price point. Yeah. I'm quite excited about this 3550.
Yeah.
I really am.
Let's see what the reviews work out to be. Like,
Yeah.
if you've got $1,500 burn a hole in your
Right.
pocket, Francesco, you're probably going to be fine spending this money. If you can wait and get another $500 in the next year, then let's see what happens next year. And
Well, I mean, there is the step
more...
up 5550 in the BenQ lineup as well, which gives it the black case, the even wider color, 100% DCI P3, little bit less light output again for even slightly higher contrast. Right. So yeah.
Mark in Western Australia. Mark is living in an older house, all brick construction, with a tile roof. His lounge, where he has his theater set up, is roughly 11.5 feet wide, 14 feet long, and 8 feet high, but it's open at the back, and this front left corner is cut off at a 45-degree angle. And we have sort of an image of this. So the front left corner is cut off. Yep. I guess he's facing that wall, that back wall, and then behind him, it's open to the rest of the house.
That's what he said. Yep.
He's planning to close off the theater by constructing a back wall with a pocket door on the left-hand side. This is meant to be a small, low-budget project, but he'd still like to get some decent muffling of the sound. He doesn't have the budget to make any changes to the ceiling, which is just a single layer of drywall directly above the wood joists above. So is there any point in going beyond a single layer of drywall on standard wood studs for the back wall that he will be constructing? I don't understand why you would equate what's going on above you with what's going on behind you.
Well, he's thinking if sound is leaking upward into the whatever above areas, whether that's attic or second floor or whatever, that is a beefed up back wall going to do anything when sound can leak through the ceiling?
I think your bigger problem is the idea of the pocket door. That was the first thing that jumped out at me. Because not only the two things that you have to have for a pocket door is, first of all, a pocket door, which will vibrate. Yeah. It's going to vibrate.
Unless you have a really good track system, which do exist but cost money.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, it is far cheaper to get a door and have it not vibrate. Out,
I mean, this is a very low resolution graphic that he's blown up, but I'm like, why can't a regular swinging door open into what is currently the theater?
Or out into the regular room.
Out into the regular room. I mean, there must be a reason, but
you will spend First of all, what I would recommend is building a regular wall that's two-sided, sure, obviously, and then putting insulation in that wall. I think, to me, that's all I would bother doing. That's what my wall has. I mean, I overstuffed it with insulation, but there is insulation in every bay of in between my house, regular house, and the wall. Then there's a regular door. If you have a pocket door, you're going to be worrying about two things. One, if you're going cheap, it's going to vibrate like crazy, and every time your subwoofer hits, the door is going to go blah, 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 blah. Right. And you're not going to be able to dampen it, because the dampening will cause it to not be able to run on its, run in and out anymore. Plus, the pocket is a big empty bay.
Yes, it is. You can't put insulation in it.
You can't put insulation in. So that's then that's going to be a path for the sound to get out much more easily than if you put insulation in there. To me, cheaper, more effective are the two things I'm looking for. That's the bifecta instead of trifecta of this, because you're going for cheap. A regular door is your friend, sir.
Yeah. As far as the wall construction itself, I'm kind of skipping ahead on some of these right to the solution, I would say to you. But to keep the price low and to not have you losing a bunch of square footage because of building huge beefy walls or something like that.
Right.
What will make the biggest difference here, if you want to have a little bit better soundproofing from this wall that you're constructing on the back without going overboard on price or square footage or something where, the difference between your ceiling and wall is so much that it doesn't make sense to do this, just regular resilient channel to hang the drywall on. Single layer of drywall, resilient channel, just the regular resilient channel on whatever side is the noisy side, right? Are you more worried about sound in your theater getting out, or are you more worried about sound outside your theater getting in? Whatever the noisy side is, that's where you use the resilient channel. You only use it on one side. But having that drywall decoupled from the wood studs will make a bigger difference than anything else without drastically upping the price. I'm not even saying sound clips and hat channels, because those take up more room and cost more. Just standard resilient channel, which is super cheap. And if you're doing it yourself, usually the reason they don't like resilient channel is because it's hardly ever installed correctly. People go right through it into a stud, and now you might as well not even have the resilient channel. But right. If this sounds like it's a DIY project, just be careful, install the resilient channel and drywall correctly. It's a minimal amount of cost, a little bit more effort for pretty good results. So I would suggest that.
So you heard us talking about double drywall with green glue. Is that supposed to be double drywall with green glue on both sides of the wood studs? I mean, it could be.
It could be.
Yeah, but you could just put it on the inside of the home theater.
Yeah, it's typically, again, on the noise-producing side, but you can use it on both sides and get even better isolation, but we're not going to say to do that in this case.
What about Sound Check Gyprock, which just appears to be thicker drywall, worth spending a bit extra if he isn't going to do double drywall? I mean, again, you're just adding mass.
Yeah. So
that mass, all it does is it makes it harder for the sound to get all the way through. Basically, it absorbs more of the energy. So, would this help? It wouldn't hurt. But what Rob's saying with the resilient channels will make more of a difference than this will. So if you did both, well, that's good. But if you didn't, then the resilient channels is the one thing that you could do.
Yeah. This is like using 5/8 drywall instead of 1/2-inch drywall. Same idea. It's okay, but I wouldn't go overboard about that. Most of the sound energy gets reflected just from the change in medium, and having the drywall decoupled from the stud makes the bigger difference.
So the door is a custom-made solid wood 3-foot 6-inch wide pocket door with the necessary framing being constructed to house it. What should be done to seal around that door to reduce sound transmission as much as possible?
Don't use a pocket door.
Don't use a pocket door. Now, I understand that because I've been in Australia. I've lived there. I know a pocket door is a very attractive thing to home buyers there because they're very much into the very clean construction and all of that. And I get it, dude. I totally get it. But no.
Regular swinging solid core door, you can weather strip around that easily.
Yeah.
That's your friend.
I mean, especially if it's custom made. I mean, you're trying to save money and you're going with the custom made door. It's just, I know you don't want to hear that. Now, if you decide to go with this anyways, I mean, you could do all the rest of the stuff, but the pocket door is going to end up being an issue. And there, as far as I know, there is no way to muffle that door from vibrating without having.
I mean, you can put in the felt strips on the front and back but you can't make things too frictiony, too tight. You can't use rubber. That's not going to work. It's not going to slide anymore. So that's about it.
I just don't know how you can do it to make it not vibrate. I mean, maybe there is a custom door, but if you could do that, I mean, that's you're trying to save. You're talking about saving money, and you're making a custom door. I'm not seeing how these things coexist. We could do one more. I gotta go. I'm hungry.
Okay.
Leonard has been using a 5.2 setup for several years. Some nice equipment. Gallo reference left and right. Those are the round ones, right?
Well, they have those in the lineup. I don't believe these particular speakers are, but yeah, Gallo does have those roundish shaped ones. Yeah.
So he's got Gallo reference left, right, and center speakers, B&W Surrounds, all powered by Rotel separates. He's found an additional pair of B&W Surround speakers that he's using. So he bought those and expanded to a 7.2 setup since he already had enough Rotel amplifier channels to power all that. Now he's decided he might as well give Atmos a go. He added 4 in-ceiling clip speakers. Wow. But, of course, he needed another 4 channels of amplification, so he plugged in his clock radio to do that. Since Atmos was a bit of an experiment, he decided to cheap out and just use an old Kenwood receiver with 5.1 analog inputs as a dumb amp and to at least get some sound playing out of the Klipsch in-ceiling speakers. He likes the way it sounds and actually thinks Atmos is a big improvement. So what do we think about his amplification solution? Does he just continue using the old cheap Kenwood receiver? It feels out of place. But would it actually be worth the expense to get a high-quality, separate 4-channel amp? Would there be any sound quality improvement at all? No, and no. I mean, if you use a watt in all of these speakers combined, at any point during your movie playback, during the loudest section, at full reference volume, if you added up all the power you were putting into those Atmos speakers, I would think a watt would be conservative.
Oh, it might get to 10 watts. It might get to 10 watts, Tom.
Please.
It might.
Please. He's probably sitting at 3.5 feet.
105 decibels coming out of each of them.
Yeah. Okay.
No, you entirely don't need to do a darn thing. What you have, done. I can appreciate this is all the equipment you have, and there's this one old Kenwood receiver sitting there that looks, if this is purely an aesthetic thing, right? I can comprehend that, but you could get the cheapest couple of like maybe get two channel amps or something. Really inexpensive ones. You can go some little Class D amps or something like that you can hide, like literally hide, so nobody even knows they're there. Anything will drive these Klipsch Atmos speakers totally fine. So I mean, there's no need to replace the Kenwood if it's purely aesthetic. Just go cheap, man.
Yeah. 100% agree. All right, who have we got left over?
Okie dokie. Got quite a few, but we got Scott B. We got Anaheim Josh. We've got Mitch R. Mark R. No relation. Mike S. Mario S. No relation. And Raj in India.
All right. He's not the one with the marble everything, is he?
Nope. New fellow from India. We're reaching people all over the globe.
All right. I want to thank our listeners in the week. We want to thank Matt for going to www.avrant.com and clicking on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link and leaving us a PayPal donation. And also to our 84 patrons at patreon.com.
Yeah, Matt, thank you very much for the PayPal donation. And thanks so much to our 84 patrons over at patreon.com/AVRant podcast if you'd like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation.
We want to thank John, Phil, and Mario for talking us up to Accessories for Less. We also want to thank Matt for talking us up to Ascend, SVS, and GIC, and also Kurt for basically having his friend buy a bunch of SVS stuff.
You got fancy with the ordering, but I'll just say John, Matt, Phil, Kurt, and Mario, thank you very much for talking us up to all those various retailers and manufacturers, and then congrats on your purchases.
All right, for AVRant, I'm Tom Andrew.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.